talking a little more about the writing section, okay? What I'm about to say here is very interesting, all right? In task one, going a bit deeper, okay? We'll have to study this here. Line graph, a bar chart, a table, a map, a process, and a diagram, okay? Now, in general training, which is the one for visas, in task one, we write in formal, semi-formal, and informal styles. Here's an example. The graph below shows the percentage of people living in urban areas. And then summarize. And then we have to carefully follow a whole detailed process here. For example, you must use the specific structure that I will teach you throughout these lessons. We will summarize all of the main traits. We will make detailed comparisons. We will strictly avoid giving any personal opinions. We will avoid making things up in our own heads. And we will make sure to write at least 150 words in total. In semi-formal, formal, and informal, which is for general training, we will write letters, little letters. Here's a letter here, which is an example. You recently moved to a new apartment. Write a letter to your landlord about a problem with the heating system. In this task, there will be 3 bullet points here. Use an appropriate tone. There will be 3 bullet points for you to write about. It is important to distinguish between formal and semi-formal writing styles. Specifically, in formal writing, you often do not know exactly who you are writing to, whereas in semi-formal, I know who I'm writing to. This distinction is essential. And of course, we give you all the tips. There are the bullets, 3 bullets, you have to cover them. When I say bullets, there are 3 requests that IELTS asks you to write about in the letter. And each letter will have its own tone of writing. Of course, in a formal letter, you'll be very formal. In a semi-formal one, it's already a little less formal. And all of this, along with grammar, we teach writing techniques. Okay? And that's how we go. We keep moving forward. For the first part of the process, we have task 1 and task 2. It is important to note that task 1 does not require any additional arguments to function properly, okay? This should be straightforward. But task 2 requires a lot of arguments. And this is extremely important for your IC. Now, regarding listening, I believe I have already explained the concept of listening more or less, just as I told you before. In section 1, it's a conversation that's social, and in section 3, it's a conversation in an academic context. In section 2, it's still social as well, and in section 4, academic. I give nearly every single one of the techniques, all the clever traps, deceptive tricks, and various other maneuvers that you might potentially come across or encounter in all these sections. So it is actually very important to listen closely. You must proceed with a high level of care and remain focused on every one of the intricate details, because I teach all these techniques. In fact, on the very first day of class, I already do a listening exercise with you. Pay attention to the S in plurals, the word limits. All of that will be included both in the listening, and I'll talk about reading in just a bit. And there are several types of questions. It can come up, actually, it always does. There's always a multiple choice, a form completion, sentence completion, map labeling, matching, and much more. There are 10 different ones in total, but these are the main ones. Listening isn't hard because it's fast. It's hard because you have to listen only once. If you could listen more than once, it wouldn't be so hard, right? And then we move on to reading, okay? For reading, I also teach techniques for, by the way, I want to tell you that in the hot mark classes, you'll have the listening room in blue, the reading room white, and each room will have a different color. You can do just the listening, just the reading, just task 1, or just task 2. or you can do everything together. Okay, and that's great because you'll have different pricing options and you'll also be able to pay in installments. All right, and let's get back to this here. There are three passages. So when I say passage, I mean three texts, long texts, for a total of 40 questions. Then you have to do it in 1 hour. When the hour is up, it's over. These three sections are important. Section 1 is an everyday social text. Section 2 is a workplace related text. And section 3 is a general interest passage, okay? And there are also different types of questions. So the types of questions, this is one of the most important things because you have to read the question and know how to scan, okay? I teach how to do scanning because if you don't scan, you'll end up taking 2 hours, 2.5 hours to finish the test. So basically, what we really have to do is consistently use the specific strategies that I teach in my lessons. For every single type of question you might encounter, for example, here you have true, false, not given, matching features, and paragraph headings, there is always a specific tip to follow. For each distinct type of question, there are helpful tips, common traps to avoid, and so much more valuable information. Therefore, we are going to carefully learn all of these essential techniques together throughout our class sessions. For those who are going to take it, remember that the class is in video format, but I will be present. I will be present with you at several moments. The speaking class is divided into three distinct sections: Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. As I mentioned earlier, and I know I have already talked quite a lot about the speaking class, Part 1 consists of exactly 12 different questions on familiar topics. Moving on, Part 2 will be the individual long turn or the cue card, which you will need to answer. For this task, you will be expected to speak continuously for up to 2 full minutes, okay? Finally, Part 3 will involve more complex analytical questions about the specific themes discussed in the previous section. Part 2, right? And of course, in speaking, we'll also learn how to use complex compound sentences. Just like in writing, you need to use them in speaking too. Speaking is more natural, it's your everyday language, it's not as academic as writing, but that we have to include to bring structures into our speaking in order to raise the band score. Otherwise, you'll just stay at band 5 and that's it. Even if you speak fluently, okay? I've even had Americans as my students. Of course, they don't have problems with speaking, but with grammar, with writing, all of that is important because nothing is really hard. Everything is technique and strategy. And that's what I teach you. Okay? See you in the next section.